Hi, I'm Jory Martin. I'm with the EDA, and I am so tickled that you guys, we as an EDA and the county, we are thrilled that you are here and taking the time to do this tour of our new proposed route for the trail that we hope comes to fruition. We did a presentation in January to the Board of Supervisors. The plan has been revised since. So this is our first opportunity to show everyone all the hard work that's been done by Parsons, by Joe, by, I think, our board. We had some input, but I really can't take much credit for it. Joe and Parsons, they've really worked hard on making this happen. And of course, the EPA as well, you know, their input, and FMC. I can't, all the alphabet letters. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joe because, and that'll be about as short-winded as I've ever been. So you go for it.
So I appreciate it, Jory. So again, I'm Joe Petty. I'm the Director of Economic Development and Tourism for the County of Warren. And so this meeting here was kind of set up in response to the EDA's involvement in looking at the trail and then possibly conveying the land or implementing that trail and that plan that's been discussed for many years now. So we got involved. The county's been looking at the Avtex Trail since, well, earlier as 1993 in some of the plans. But in 2017, we had a contractor actually come out and begin conceptualizing what it might look like. And most recently, we've had some ARPA funds and things like that have come our way that we can possibly put towards beginning to implement this project that's been many years in the making. So the idea today is there have been questions and people have had some comments on the presentations that have come up. So that it was suggested to invite key stakeholders down here today to get a firsthand look of what the plan is and also just what the property's like. We can show you maps, we can show you photographs, but until you're here to really physically experience it, you don't really quite understand or grasp how large this property is and what a valued asset is here. And to also appreciate the hard work that's gone in from the folks here at Parsons and what they're doing down here every day. So the idea is that we'll go over a little bit here and I'll go a little bit further into kind of the trail concept and what it might look like from this standpoint of where we stand. And then if we could jump in our cars and we'll carpool if possible, and we'll follow the road that loops around the property, and we'll get out at like 3 points to kind of show you what that looks like and what where the trail might go. But also we have a lot of people here. Hopefully everybody did the sign-in sheet for the property. I want to make sure everybody gets checked in. And then, but I would like to kind of go around real quick and just everybody introduce themselves and your organization. And that way, as we're all chatting and we're walking around, we know who we're talking to. So again, Joe Petty, County of Warren, Director of Economic Development and Tourism.
Jory Martin, EDA Board.
Alex Bridges, Northern Virginia Daily.
Melissa DiDomenico-Payne, I'm on the town council.
Amber Morris, Front Royal Town Council.
Buck Smith, Warren County Public Schools.
Scott Jenkins, Front Royal, Warren County EDA.
Aiden Ashworth, Front Royal, Warren County EDA.
Vicky Cook, Board of Supervisors.
Ed Daly, County Administrator.
I'm Hugh. I work for Parsons. I'm the site superintendent here.
Good morning, Lisa Denmark with EPA.
Augusta Mary with EPA.
Jeremy Henry with Parsons.
Ann Burnham with Parsons.
Rich Cooley with the Northern Virginia Daily.
Roger B. Kenney, Royal Examiner.
Mark behind the camera.
Mark, Royal Examiner.
So in the email I shared kind of a conceptual map. You know, it is a line on a map. It is not exact by any means. And that is something that we had worked with, you know, Parsons and everybody on site to kind of help determine what would be the best. The very end of the packet was the 2000 master plan conceptual drawing. And as we talk, you'll understand how that might not be likely in the interim because of the vegetation and the access and the things that are going on here. And so we had gone through a few versions of what the trail might look like. and it ultimately reverted down to that river trail. And this trail would connect the existing Royal Shenandoah Greenway that is in Easton Park, just south of the property, and the Luray Avenue boat landing. And it would run north-south along the river. And we'll go down there and you can see exactly what that might look like. And then it would exit to the north. There are private properties north of this. As recently as Friday, I've had ongoing conversations, but on Friday we met on site, or I met on site with those property owners, and again, told them about the meeting today. We had the same maps, and they looked at it, and they're supportive of the project. And when we get to a point that the trail is being implemented, we'll get into further discussions on what that looks like to exit through. And then the trail concept would ultimately exit out onto Kendrick Lane, and then it can continue on to a greater network of trail and so for bike and pedestrian options throughout our community. This could be a key transportation option for our community, our kids who are in these neighborhoods, connecting them to Skyline High School, Skyline Middle School, things south of here that right now you have to go around this large piece of property. So being able to easily connect these neighborhoods and our community would be a valued asset. And ultimately too, we are a stakeholder in the Shenandoah Rail Trail, which is a larger regional project that would have its northern terminus here in Warren County in Front Royal. And so anything that we can do to continue to connect our neighborhood through pedestrian and bikes will be a huge asset to also connect to what could be a 49-mile rail trail through the Shenandoah Valley. So that's a big part of this. And also, again, we have been talking about this plan, this park, this trail for many years now. And we're getting closer each day to hopefully getting that implemented with our stakeholders. And we think that's beginning to turn the page on what people may perceive this property to be. We know it's a super fun site, but it's been off limits for so long. And if we can begin to engage the public in it, having interpretive signage and an educational opportunity to tell people the story here and what's happened and what's the future, we think that that's a pretty strong point as well. And we also feel as from economic development standpoint, they also own the property to the east of the railroad tracks, and that is a developable piece of property. And we think perceptually it will be a much better marketing idea that if people know that over here there is a trail and a passive recreation park, it makes it a much more marketable product next door for development if people know that, instead of saying that it's just still a super fun site that is off limits. So, we definitely feel like it begins to change the narrative for the property for the better. And we think it's just going to be a great community asset for everybody. So that's, and as everybody who knows me, I'm big into bike and pedestrian, and anytime we can talk about trails, I get excited. So this is a great opportunity to bring this storyline to everybody. And it's been a pleasure to speak with council and the EDA and the county about this project. And again, this is to get us here and get you on the ground and really experience it for yourself. So if anybody has any questions right now, I'd be happy to answer them. And I think, we identified all the stakeholders and they are so knowledgeable what's happened. I mean, Adam and Jerry have been great to talk about what they're doing here. And as we go around, I think it'd be very valuable. You can ask them questions to put them on the spot, but what they do, and when you see something, ask about it, and what is that, and what happened, why can't we be here, or why do we have to move, and why was the trail decided to go there, and what reasons. And it's a safety, security, and an operations and maintenance. They're down here working every day, and we don't want to get in their way of getting things done. to have people pass through, and that's what this would be. It's just a passive recreation to get from point A to point B. So does anybody have any questions right now? And everybody got the map, and I have copies if you want a copy and want to check it out, but it should have been emailed around, and if you want to see it again or just need a hard copy, let me know. I'd be happy to share that. Is there anything else to add?
I don't. We had some late folks, if you want
Yeah.
them to announce who they are and
Yeah.
whatever. We're pointing fingers at you guys. So.
Oh, were you guys? We were too. Okay, I'm Courtney Marquette. I'm with Virginia DEQ.
I'm Fran Wright. I'm also Virginia DEQ at the Valley office.
I'm Eric Millard, also Virginia DEQ, Valley office.
Nathan Lewis, Virginia DEQ, Valley office.
And I'm Celeste Ford, and I'm also at DQ.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. So, and you might have missed the beginning, but we're just kind of going over what the project is and how it got to be to this point, and then we're going to kind of jump in our cars and create a train and drive around and stop at a few points to get out, take a look, and discuss what that trail concept looks like at those particular points. And those might, when we get out there and we talk about what that vision is, that might begin to spur some additional dialogue questions at that point. So I mean, if there's no questions right now, then I guess we can go. So the first stop, and I'll defer to Adam too, is we would take the road and stop where the box culvert is. And then after that, we'll go down, I think it's where the discharge is in the building. And then the last spot will be at the, I think it's over here by this well where the trail came up. And then after that, we would be good unless anybody wanted to walk down to the pump station. I don't want anybody driving down there because of the dead end. So I'll have you guys lead the way and then we'll follow behind. That works.
Real quick safety.
Yeah.
So biggest concern is going to be biological hazards, ticks. We have ticks on this site, probably worse than any other piece of property in the county. We have some permethrin spray if people want to spray. Check yourselves for ticks. Anything you touch out here most likely has a tick on it. We'll be mainly on gravel roads. They still are on the gravel roads on this site. Don't travel off a gravel road. If you need to back up, turn around. If it's not gravel, don't pull off on it. Most of these are basin caps and line basin caps in a bunch of areas. If you have an area you can't get turned around, can't figure out which way you need to go, get me or Jeremy. We'll get you squared away. Railroad crossing on your way out, just be cautious. Those crossing arms don't always come down with service vehicles, and the trains do not blow a whistle across there. So when you are leaving the site, just make sure you take a good stop, look and listen before you cross some tracks. We have bathrooms inside if anybody needs anything. Water, if anybody needs any bottled water, anything to drink, we have that in the facility as well. If you have any type of medical emergency, this will be the muster point. Everybody will immediately come back to this parking lot. Me or Jeremy will be close in all times, so reach out to one of us immediately if somebody has some sort of issue.
So this part on your map that you have is the exit of the northern end. So the trail will go down and we'll see kind of where the trail is, but it would come up to this point and then it would exit into the adjoining property owner. So I mentioned earlier I met with the adjoining property owners and discussed it with them. So this property owner here was recently approved through town for a campground, and the trail would not go through that use. We kept them completely separate. We didn't want to disturb, their operations, but we, wanted to make sure that, obviously it would be adjacent to it. So anybody who would be staying there from a tourism perspective would then be able to link up to this trail and benefit from its access. But the concept is that it would head out this way, and then there's an access road that connects over to Kendrick Lane through also an industrial park. And that property owner was also there to talk about, possible easements and getting people to and from Kendrick Lane. And then that would take them under the railroad tracks. There's already the railroad goes over, because that's another key component is crossing that barrier, and there's already infrastructure there for people to go under. We don't want to have to get into that world of railroad crossings. The other benefit of using this access is there's already a box culvert here. As this ravine goes down, it continues to get a little bit larger as you get closer to the river. And so we wanted to try and avoid any further, again, expenses and bridge work and excavation. So our intention originally was to try and use as much existing infrastructure as possible. The key to that is we don't want to disrupt, again, the operations and maintenance, but then also disrupt anything that's behind us here with the caps and basins and the soil. So anytime we can utilize something that's already here, that's going to be a win. So again, we would utilize this. Now maybe years down the road, if the trail's here and everything's getting better, we could possibly do a bridge or something at the very end by the river, but this is, our first option, and I think it's a pretty good one. As this road goes down, we're in, the active area in which Parsons is working. And so there was a lot of discussion of how do we protect what they're doing and protect the trail users. And everybody's personal curiosity, if they're on this trail, they might want to venture into that, and we want to prevent that. So fencing is probably the best option there. And looking at what type of fencing options are available is in that packet. We'd probably be looking at more of the first option was more of an agricultural fence that you would see, American wire, typical posts, maybe some T-posts. That's good for a maintenance standpoint. Most of our parks use wooden split rail, but there's maintenance involved to that. And also that can easily be removed, and then there's not really a security barrier. The wire fence has a longer lifespan, and there's more of a security aspect. You just can't remove the rail and then enter it. Because another concern for trail users is somebody who might want to bring their four-wheeler or their dirt bike down here. That American wire fence would be more preventative from them getting in. The challenge with that is you would obviously have to dig down into the soil to place those fences, which can be a concern for what's already in the ground here from the caps or just that soil. So the other option was possibly you typically see them as a temporary security fence, and they're held down with a large ballast, sometimes concrete. That might be an option that we could do here. Create a fence. It's held down with a weight that a typical person's just not going to be able to pick up and move, and that way we're not having to dig and excavate into the soil. So that was the other alternative that we suggested through this segment. If a trail or if a fence is needed, to use that ballast type of fence, so we're not having to dig down in anything. And then the other part of it is also gates. As the trail user would come up, we don't want them to continue forward with this road, so we would have to put in some type of gate. The style of the gate and how that works is obviously up for debate, and it's obviously whatever's best for Parsons, and so they can navigate and EPA and them as they're here. But we would obviously have some type of gate structure at this point to prevent trail users from continuing onto the property and directing them across the road here. So I don't know, Adam, you just want to allude to kind of, since we're here, what are we looking at behind us here?
So the power poles are essentially the property line. So everything on this side of the power poles is adjoining property owner. Everything to the south of us is all part of former property. So what we're looking at here, this structure, basin structure, is 4, 5, 6 viscose basin. It was a former viscose basin. They used to use rayon manufacturing spent viscose, and this was a storage basin for some of those bad batches. This whole property, this whole section is lined, so it's capped and lined with a 40 mil HDPE liner, and it has a minimum of 2 foot of clean cover soil on top of it. So this would be one of those sections, as you were talking about, Joe, that would be prohibitive of putting anything in the ground. There's 70 acres total of property here that has that continuous liner welded around it. On this trail, as we go down, on the left-hand side, you'll see a control panel. We have a lift station that runs the toe of this slope that feeds back one of the source waters for the GLTP. That manhole in the middle of this road as we go down is the actual pump station. So that would be directly in the middle of this road as we go down each other side.
Anybody have any questions while we're here at this particular point? Again, the trail here, again, if we could utilize this road, may have to, there would still be operations going on with vehicles and testing and stuff. Obviously they work your typical workday hours. I'm sure there's a lot of times where they're having to work over hours and people are here too. Your typical trail user is probably going to be more of the evening or weekend time as well. So some of those behaviors might not conflict as much, but there will be some of those traffic movements where there might be a maintenance vehicle and a trail user. So those are other things that we are thinking about as we're looking at this process, about how did those users interact with one another through signage, education, and just awareness of your surroundings. So it's just something else that we're making sure that we're covering through this conceptual phase. So any other questions at this
I got
particular?
a question. What's the end game for all this lumber back here?
You'd have to talk. You'd have to talk to the property owner.
Private property.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that's again. So that's the power lines are almost the exact property line that separates the Aftex property from the adjoining property. So anything you see behind us is not related to what we're doing or what we're thinking. It's just the only thing that allude to this property is that this could be the potential northern exit of it through those adjoining property owners, with their support. And again, that's kind of been the long-term plan throughout it, and that would avoid the railroad crossing and stuff. So, again, we also looked at this as phases as possible. If, it wasn't out and back, it's not, while not ideal, it gets us going in the right direction. So if it did have to come from Easton Park, and then it would be an out and back, which at the next point we'll kind of highlight that, so be it, we'll operate at that phase, and then we'll continue to move forward as, progress happens here, and, things get more established next door, but we'll continue to explore that.
Oh.
Just long as don't lose it.
Yeah. So, and Jeremy may know this story. So this point is kind of, a little bit, because I don't think the trail's already out at this point. So you would be coming up this road and make this turn. But this is a good just highlighting point about, again, some of the remediation and things that you see that have gone on. You can kind of see it from a distance as some of the vent pipes that Adam talked about behind you. Behind us is a stormwater retention pond. This is not one of the old basins, correct?
Correct.
And the other point is we are in the floodplain. If this is along the river, we are well within the floodplain at this point. So it's something else that we're taking into account when talking about this trail, the materials that are used and what it looks like. And so we're kind of mirroring what we've done at the county. The Easton Park Trail is just south, that's in the floodplain, and also taking notes of what the state park has done at the Antigas-Shenandoah River State Park. They have the Bluebell Trail that runs along the river, and if you've never been, you should go, but it's a gravel-based trail, and they've done some mesh in there to kind of make sure that they're keeping that gravel. So this particular point is the discharge point, correct?
Correct.
So do you want to talk about can you just explain what you all, the wells and the pumping, the cleaning?
So we have 3 test wells on this property that treat water from strictly underneath of this piece of property. They run through our water treatment facility, treat it through multiple different stages of treatment. That does through mechanical, biological filtration, goes out through a set of 1 micron bag filters, and then gets pumped 4,400 feet here to our permitted discharge point. This was the original permitted discharge point for the Avtex Fibers facility that was reused and retrofitted for our discharge point.
And the water plant was here for Aftex, and it was moved to that point for multiple reasons. One was floodplain, and then others, obviously design aesthetics for the whole thing. So if we want, we can walk down. You can see this is a good point to see the river from the trail and to kind of understand kind of what the topo looks like. The next point will be the last stopping point for us to get out and chat. And you'll be able to see the river, but it's probably not as nice as a gravel road over there to walk to it. And then there will be a final stop, if we want, as optional, at the railroad tracks where you can walk down to the old pumping station, which is nice to see. Again, it gives you another idea of what the trail would look like. That is also the point where the trail will come up from the boat landing at Luray Avenue, and you can see the old pumping station, which we would have to secure as part of the trail to ensure nobody is entering that facility. But again, it also paints that idea, that story about this trail and the Aftex and what happened here is one of our largest employers here and what they did for us as a community, and then where it is today and how this is now a new community benefit. So if we want, we can, Jory had a
I was going to say, and what safeguards need to be here? What are we looking at this spot here so that we know what infrastructure we have to be placed here?
And again, fencing is kind of the one. Once we get up on top, away from the river and into the, what I would just consider the remediation site, that's where we're having to do some of the fencing again. And we will work closely with people on the ground who are actually doing the work to understand what that fencing looks like. Because if you drove in and you're looking around, you'll see all the yellow bollards that protect the wells. They need access to all of those. So we can't obviously put a fence next to it where they can't get to it. So we would have to strategically look at breaks in the fence for gates and access. You can see they have to mow this. So as we get approval to move forward with this trail and we work through those details, the actual design and implementation will have to be a close project with Parsons and FMC and DEQ and all EPA, everybody involved, to ensure that the operations and maintenance for the ongoing remediation effort is still being able to be done with the trail in place. So this area, there'd be some fencing, maybe some gates in some areas that are needed, but obviously it would be to direct trail users along this road and up and out. Again,
So it'd
that's
be closed
pending.
off up here then, is what you're saying, it'd be gated off up here?
We'll at the
Yeah.
next spot we'll
Okay.
show kind of what that is as far as gates. There might be one here, and again, that's going to be for the final design. Again, the map I gave you is just a line. It's conceptual. We would have to really get into the details with, possibly a surveyor and the teams here to mark where the wells are and everything, and then where the fencing goes and where breaks would be. And that is hopefully the next step, if we get support from all the stakeholders that this is a good idea and we want to move forward with it, that we would then engage with an engineer or surveyor to then define exactly where that trail would go, and working again closely with people here on site.
No, not what we can discharge, just the level as far as the sampling criteria, just the normal EPA. We found during studies, basic tree work for designing the plant, soil, groundwater, that water from out for above down instead of pulling it in. Soil continues to they want to drop it down and find that they drop it in the ground. So it has to be like that.
Possibility, be a long dive though. Need a rope. Need a rope to get out.
Stick with roll paper towels and spill on the table. As long as there's something there that will keep something that just keeps getting smaller and smaller.
Only when you get on it. A long way to get up here.
100%, but I think Avtex had their own land, and then once it was determined there was contamination, they
I'm not
expanded
worried
those
about me
boundaries
melting.
to cover what was.
That's what I
And
was
like
thinking.
across the river,
Melt.
there's owned, but there's also private property owners still over there that have been there. So I think it's a mix, but I can't,
Yeah.
100%. That would require some, I mean,
Oh, no, that's
EPA
what
might know, or even Parsons might know.
I was just curious if
But
they
I
had
think
all this land.
they did, most of it was.
Yeah.
I think most of it was. It's the fringes, I think, is
Wasn't
where.
part of it allied, or, I mean, wasn't it like two
Well,
different?
they
two
were
different
over
companies?
here.
I'd have to go back and look. I need to go back and look at the whole history stuff. But
Well, Parsons would be good. You could, or even EPA
Yeah.
understand if they had to expand the boundaries because of where they found it.
Yeah.
But I don't know that.
I'll tell you what was really weird is I was lucky enough to be. Oh, y'all having fun now?
Oh, yeah.
I know you do.
Yeah. I know. I'm gonna enjoy it, man.
Enjoy this.
It's been too long.
I'm standing in the back. Maybe Joe won't follow me this time.
You're an important guy, man. If you want me to call on Jeremy, I'll call him.
Yeah, call on Jeremy. Call on Jeremy.
So this is the point of which the trail will exit the river. So the trail will run along the river the entire route. I guess we could probably stop up at that well right there, and that'll show another point. But the trail will run adjacent to the river, down close to the water's edge, and then it will exit at this point and come up. So there are a few breaks where it will have to exit the river, come up to the trail or the road, and then back down. And these are points where there are these runoff areas that it goes in. So the other option, there's another section up the road where it's a similar ravine, and in that map it highlighted that could be a potential bridge and it just continues along, or it would be a point that the trail user would come up to the road and then just go straight back down. Some of the challenges with that could be the steep terrain and to get up from there to here, because this is mild compared to once we go over this ridge, it becomes quite steep down. And that's why we hadn't proposed a fence along the river section, is because as you get down to that river and you look up, it's quite steep, lots of vegetation. It's kind of a natural barrier. But the river trail will come down the river and then X up. There is a bench cut road that runs along the river throughout the whole way, and then it comes up because there are also wells down on the river's edge that Parsons accesses on a routine basis for testing, and they mow and clean that. So this would be a point in which you come up, and we'll have an opportunity up the hill likely that you can, if you want to venture through, it's probably a little mode different up there, that you could walk down and actually see the road that runs along. But that is the intention, is you would come up to this point and then you would take this road to where we were. There would likely have to be, again, security gates and measures to prevent trail users from venturing beyond the trail. And those would, again, be part of our discussion. So any questions of this area? Yep. So we would, again, like to do as little excavation as possible. Currently, they can correct me, I think they bush hog it with a 7-foot bush hog and a tractor. So right now they're bush hogging an area that's 7 foot wide. So at that point, we would be looking at possibly like a 6-foot trail, maybe 7-foot trail width, that then we would have a small buffer on each side that we could then mow and maintain those edges to, the trail user would have the trail, and then it would be natural vegetation to the left and right. If you get the opportunity, we walk and you walk down where the trail would be, it meanders up and down along the river's edge. There are some areas that it is 5-6 feet from the river, maybe a little further today because of the water level, but it is close. And then other areas it goes back up. It just meanders and goes around trees and things. And so there are mature trees along the route. The best example that we can use is, again, like Eastham Park. It's nice and mowed and clean down by the river, but as you exit that, you go onto the railroad tracks and up the hill, it's mainly just the trail and a little shoulder on the edge that is mowed and maintained. So, any other questions at this point? So we'll probably head up to where the road bends back, and that'll be another point where we can hop out real quick, and then we'll be at the point where we can get out and you can walk to the pump station. So, but at this point, this will be the last, official stopping point. At this point, when the road comes up, we'll end up at the railroad track. You can see the crossing arms. If you're done with us, you can keep on going. The idea is that if people wanted to walk to the pumping station, we can just stop there and walk down. I'd be happy to do that. And then obviously, anybody that still has cars, you can go to the parking lot, turn around. But at this point here, as we came up, there was a low spot there, and that would be the area we identified for a possible bridge, similar to the other section. That was where the trail would have to come up to the road and back down, or a possible bridge to go over that drainage ditch. But this kind of also highlights, if you look down over this hill, you can see the road down there. And if anybody walks to the pumping station, we can walk down to it there, and you can see the steep, you'll have to walk down the steep slope to get to it. But that is where the trail would run along that river, and we are up on the edge of the old former basin here. So that's, again, why we didn't propose a fence here. That's the requirement. We'll negotiate that, but that is pretty good natural barrier between the trail and the site. And again, I think it just separates the uses. But then again, like I said, look down there. For folks who want to walk, we'll do that after this. But then again, to kind of also highlight what is going on behind us, because that is a big question. Inviting people into a site that's going on, you can again see everything that's going on the pipe, the water facility. This is one of the wells that pumps to the facility, correct? That we're standing next to, and then you have the test wells also right next to us. So you can kind of see why we don't want to be up here. Not that it's unsafe, but they're still working. So we don't want to be getting in their way to recreate or commute or whatever we would use the trail for. Let them continue to do this work, and in the future we'll be able to do something here once they're done cleaning. But at this point, does anybody have any questions to wrap up? And then, like I said, we'll continue up this road to where it breaks, and then for folks who want to walk to the pump station, we'll park and walk down. For folks who are done with us, you can keep on going into town. And I appreciate everybody for coming. I'm sure I'll want to talk to some folks afterwards. But does anybody have any questions while we have the complete group still here for me or one of the agencies? No? Well, again, I appreciate it. I think this was helpful to get everybody here. Again, we've gotten a lot of questions as we've been talking about this recently. A lot of just unknowns about what the property looks like. And again, I think hopefully standing here illustrates why this is so important. I mean, this is a great place. Hopefully you've seen some of the deer and the wildlife. This is a connection to, we were talking earlier, Hayden and I, about this connects to a county park, which connects to school property, which then connects to the national park. It's just an extension of, almost conserved property that is, for the community. And we think it would just be a great asset for us. And again, to bring this property back online for Front Rural Warren County is a huge asset. huge bonus. But I think Parsons and EPA, DEQ, and FMC and everybody for being here with us. Thank you guys for helping coordinate as well, and the EDA for allowing us to come. But if anybody has any questions, I think most people have my contact. I'd be happy to discuss afterwards, and I'll probably be walking down to the pump station for folks who want to go down there too. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe.